Carlsen Duda. Duda Carlsen. We have had this many times recently, and it's always a very exciting intro into a final of any chess event. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm presenting you two games from the Magnus Carlsen Jan Krzysztof Duda Chess Champions Tour final. Two super exciting games, so without further ado, let's jump right into it. This time round, Maggie is in the black trunks, and again, just like against Ding Liren, he is playing the Semi Slav, and this time round we are going to head for the Meran variation. Has been very popular on top level chess for the last 80 years or thereabouts. A very solid, very fun opening that I recommend to anyone. And although Duda here plays a quieter variation after pawn e4, things tend to heat up a little bit. Take, knight f6. And here queen h4 is actually a reasonably new idea, or I should rather say that one that hasn't been tested particularly frequently. Queen c2 is the main move, followed by rook d1, where black's main method usually to attempt equality, or rather to attempt achieving equality, is to play c5. That is the main theme, and of course it doesn't change much even if the queen goes to h4 instead, so much so that Carlsen played c5 right away, rook d1. Both sides are playing very logical, healthy, good-looking chess moves. Queen c7, and here actually, I don't know if Duda missed this idea or whether it was seen by him but incorrectly evaluated, but actually the best move for white here is the absolutely insane bishop h6. And this motif is actually very well known to those who play the Catalan with white, because Hungary's top GM Lajos Portis back in the day scored a spectacular victory against Ivan Radulov in the 1978 Chess Olympiad, and in fact a couple of rounds later in the crucial game Hungary against Yugoslavia, Ribley against Ljubojevic had the exact same motif, in fact the exact same motif as Portis earlier. Anyway, long story short, ever since this bishop h6 idea has been known as a really annoying one, the key concept is not only that takes obviously is not that great because queen f6. The key concept is that after castles, white has bishop takes g7, and after king takes we have check, check, and the whole position just collapses. Not sure once again if Duda missed it or what was the story there, but he played bishop e3, h6. Now obviously Magnus is preventing those ideas. dc, bishop c, knight d4. A great idea rerouting the knight towards b5, but to put it more simply, just centralizing the knight is a good concept here. a6 was fending this off, and here actually Duda somewhat, I don't know what to call it, not as powerfully played it as he could have by actually mirroring the bunny ears. Very rarely is this the good choice, by the way, that your opponent bunny ears you and you counter bunny ear them back. Interestingly enough, there was a beautiful tactical sequence that would have granted white a sizable advantage after bishop f4. A beautiful variation. e5, knight f5. Once again, benefiting from the centralized knight. ef4, more or less forced. Takes g7, king e7 forced, because otherwise f6 drops. Knight f5 check. King e6 forced, actually. I don't know why I went king e8 there. Knight g7 check. And so at this point, white doesn't really have a choice but to do something else rather than knight f5 check, because clearly that's a perpetual check. But there is rook e1 here, exploiting this king stuck in the middle. And now a fascinating variation could run like this. Rook g8. Note how the bishop seemingly doesn't have a good discovered check, because no loose black pieces are to be found on white squares. So bishop g4 check, king f8, and here comes the beautiful deep and main idea of the whole operation. Knight e6 check, sacking a second piece for the sake of cracking the defenses of the black king open. And after fe, queen f6, it's now carnage. It's really, really amazing how white is going to now mow down the entire king side with checks. Watch the pawns disappear one by one. Check, 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 just gone. We just absolutely deleted the black king side. Like, there's nothing left. Look at that. That's an amazing picture, actually. I didn't really think about it. But from here on, white just takes the piece on every single go, and all of these bad boys will disappear. Look, bang, 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 done. And although I'm pressing the wrong button, which is obviously very annoying for you guys. Although, actually, after the check, I reckon it's better to go king f6 so that we can retake with the rook. And then g2 is hanging. So what I was going to say was that, although white has got 4 pawns and a rook for the 2 bishops, there are still some technical issues here to convert this. But without a shadow of a doubt, white should win this position. So instead, a3 was played. And now Magnus sort of brought the game back into normality and into reasonably safe territory. Knight b3 was played here. The instant c5 would have been far more powerful. And you know, in this high level of chess, these little nuances matter. Like, an old hobby horse of mine is that I always tell my students, don't prepare a move that is good to go. And knight b3 is preparing c5 when c5 is totally good to go, because after tuck, 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 knight b3, the bishop just drops and the game is over. And so this was perfectly unnecessary, and Magnus immediately seizes the opportunity to improve piece placement. And then here comes the trickery, and I think this is actually, to be fair to Duda, I think this is what he overlooked, that he, Magnus, also had rook d8. And that must have been a very bitter pill to swallow, realizing that cb6 loses to queen c1 followed by mate on d1, which meant that Duda had to waste another move, or not waste, but really play another move that was not pawn takes. And now Magnus just pushed past because he's ready to blockade the pass pawn, and his piece activity more than compensates for the structural issue that white has got, an otherwise very powerful protected pass pawn. c6 was played, apparently a bluff, which should have been and could have been taken, because after knight a5 I think we just have rook d6. Let me check. Yes, we do. Rook d6, and if bishop f3, then bishop takes f3, and we rinse and repeat the exact same backrank issue that we saw earlier. Magnus dropped back to a8, and now things got again a little bit hairy, but really everything is under control. And here actually a very curious blunder happened, and I tried to figure out what was the cause of the blunder, and I think I managed to uncover the secret in a true Agent what was David Duchovny name? Mulder, Agent Mulder style from X-Files. Yeah, I nearly didn't recall that quite, but I managed. So Mulder, because bishop e4 was played, and that just drops e3, drops a3, drops the whole house. And I'm like, how is that possible that Duda would allow this and just lose, where in fact, according to the engine, rook e1 still holds a draw? What's going on? And then I think I managed to figure out the reason. I would love to consult with Duda about this, but obviously I don't have the chance. I think what he may have missed was that after bishop e4 takes, bishop b1, rook a3, I thought that he must have thought that rook d1, this looks like a forcing variation. Bishop f6, queen e4, g6. And I reckon he calculated it all the way to here. And perhaps he thought he had rook d7. Maybe that's what he missed, that after rook d7, black actually just takes. And the pawn can't promote because C, I wouldn't want to be here, and this is dropping here. Maybe. That is the only assumption I have, but even this is rather vague, because I reckon even after the check, black is winning. So yeah, I don't know, man. This is strange. Something definitely derailed here very badly, because he just dropped the pawns, and Magnus just brought the game home without any particular difficulty at all. He took all the pawns and converted this game into a win. A rather topsy-turvy game that was filled with tactical chances for both sides, but in particular, Duda missed the chance there when his knight was on d4 and he didn't go for that bishop f4, knight f5 idea. But in the end, Magnus prevailed yet again. Now, following game, Magnus is white, and that was a very interesting one too. I'm gonna fly through the whole opening middle game because it was rather actually a tedious, boring situation where they got into this pawn structure. and neither side can really hurt the other. Okay, so the idea here is that after bishop d2, take knight d4 loses a piece to bishop e1. In any other case, like if you just follow the game for a little bit, it's rather clear to see, especially after playing b3 and not b4. Like here, both sides just go like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then they played like 75 whatever moves, very clearly indicating that they didn't want to have a go at a win. But to be fair, I do think that black can never play this for a win, but white can. And I wonder whether Magnus was first testing the waters to see if actually Duda would try to do something. And when he saw that, well, the ball was passed to his court, he went like, okay, you know what, I will try. Because white certainly does have the chance to change the pawn structure by virtue of b4, a5 or b4, c5. Black's only chance is to open up this h file, but that really amounts to nothing. Plus, I can easily shut it down with bishop f3 anyway. So eventually, Magnus decided to do what he, in my opinion, was ought to do, and that was to attempt to play for a win on the queen side, and boy, he did. Like, this is now looking like a very bad King's Indian, where black didn't manage to drum up any attack whatsoever on the king side, and he's getting swept off the board on the queen side. Queen g6. Here c6 would have been a much better choice. When take knight b6, ba5 is just complete carnage. And if the knight drops back, then comes the classic King's Indian motif with the knight entirely locked up. It is unplayable. I'm slightly surprised that Magnus went for this. He did see knight d5 for sure, which was the whole idea behind this operation. I think he wanted to prove this line wrong by taking here, going for knight d7, knight d3, queen d2 takes, rook f7 and ba5, which is a beautiful case of positional domination. I'm not sure if it's actually bishop or king. Yeah, bishop. Rook f7 actually is met by queen d5. Sorry, I was meant to say queen f7 and takes then on a5. And white is definitely enjoying the upper hand here, despite being an exchange down, because the black pieces are extremely cramped and the c7 pawn is a boss. Rook d1 is an even more accurate move here, actually. Yeah, rook d1. Sorry, that is the move. That is the move there, which actually more or less traps the knight, by the way. Wow. That's pretty cool. Anyway, of course, Duda did not opt for that, so he didn't take a3, but instead went for a4. And a really curious middle game scenario occurred here. The engine really loves rook f2 here, by the way, with the idea of bringing this rook to the second rank, and it is indeed very powerful. Magnus went rook d1, which I think it was part of that was just to do a bit of a tongue-in-cheek that, oh, we want to take e3 with like forking 75 pieces. Well, guess what? You can't do that because d7 is hanging with check. So he dropped back, and that was the second time when Duda made a very curious blunder from what I can say or see, because here after queen f7, bishop b4, rook c7, c8, sorry, everything is looking very logical. Magnus plays rook d3, trying to double up on the d file, and here Duda plays a3, and instead knight c4, rook takes d7, queen d7, queen c4, rook c7, would have turned this game into a total mess, where black is very well compensated against the two bishops by the pawn on a4 and by the fact that this g2 bishop is complete garbage. Now, instead of this, Duda played the extremely curious blunder a3 and essentially repeated the same variation. Now, he must have thought, and again, I'm not blaming him, or I'm not saying like, how could you do this, bro? I would have lost this game 7 years ago. He obviously must have thought that the difference was exactly that now the bishop was hanging on a3. And the other day, Nigel Short posted a very interesting position and line from one of his games on Twitter, and I made a comment about it, that very often you find that great players calculate the same lines as weaker players, except they evaluate them differently. Now here we have got two great players, but still the difference was between the two of them is that they saw the same line, which was this, except they evaluated differently. Because Magnus saw that after b6, the queen-rook combo is entirely paralyzed, and he's going to be able to outpower them despite his material deficit. Rook d3 was played. That is designed against queen d5. Once the queens are off and this pawn takes, that's just carnage. And now Magnus devised a very clever positional plan that I really, really liked. When I saw rook b1 here, I went like, what are you doing, bro? And then I realized that his genius plan was to put the bishop to e2 to cover penetration squares, and then rook b5, rook d5 is the winning motive. Sheer genius. To find this with 41 seconds on the clock, holy cow, man. That is world champion stuff. Bishop f3, bishop e2, and he just, yeah, he defends the pawn on e3, and in he goes. Now he actually doesn't need to go in because queen b4 forces stuff off. The queens need to come off, and now it's all about bing, bing, bing. And that is virtually unstoppable. King f8, bishop c4, king e7, bishop d5. And I could have already called it off and go like, Maggie did it again. But look at the last second effort. Eric Rosen would be very proud of this, man. Check this out. Rook a8. And all of a sudden, if we take, tada, check. And now white is playing for survival. Hello? Because after king f3, it's forced mate. It's never over till it's over. And white just can't stop. Check, check, checkmate. So I will model you this. Check, check, and mate. Boomski. And so this had to be stopped. And of course, after king e1, now black has got just check, 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 and perpetual check. But Magnus, being the world champion, of course, went like, no, thank you. And all Duda had was left to resign. So these were the two games from the Champion Chess Tour today between Magnus Carlsen, the reigning world champion, and Jan Krzysztof Duda. I'm going to be back with the rest tomorrow. Keep your eyes peeled. Be sure to like, subscribe, chuck a message. Love me. I will love you back. I will come back with the next video tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Bye.